think about something for a second. Consider all the times you've been told to just, be patient.
Right, yeah.
You put in the hard work, you do the right thing, you treat the people around you well, and then you just sit back and wait. You wait for the universe or karma or, I don't know, just the natural order of things to eventually reward your good deeds.
Mm-hmm. The classic cosmic bargain.
Exactly. It's this cosmic bargain we all just blindly accept. But what if I asked you to consider a completely radical premise today? What if every single time you patiently waited for that cosmic reward, you were actually being robbed?
It's a premise that completely flips the script on everything we were taught about morality and endurance, and patience, really.
Mm-hmm.
It forces a very uncomfortable reevaluation of how we spend our energy.
And that discomfort brings us to the focus of today's deep dive. We are looking at a highly detailed set of blueprints and scripts for a massive media suite.
Yeah, it's quite a collection.
It really is. The package includes this 40-minute audio presentation and a sprawling outline for a 30-chapter book. The whole project is titled The Cosmic Thief.
By the 501 Empire.
Right. Produced by an organization calling itself the 501 Empire. And our mission today is to unpack their core philosophy, which they call forensic spirituality.
Forensic spirituality, yeah.
Basically, this philosophy argues that the good are constantly left with nothing, while the bad just continue to prosper. But, rather than just complaining about it, they offer this highly specific blueprint to fight back.
And setting the stage for the tone of these sources is, well, it's critical. The material we're analyzing is heavily steeped in a mystical, almost sovereign citizen style of terminology.
Oh, definitely. The language is intense.
Right. The text introduces these grand archetypal figures presenting the information. Characters going by names like the Mad Philosopher and Helios, architect of the 501 Empire.
Yeah, which sounds very esoteric.
It does. But if you look beneath that esoteric veneer, the material is ultimately structured as a stark, highly aggressive audit of cosmic justice.
An audit. I love that.
Yeah, the authors aren't just philosophizing over a cup of tea here. They're treating the universe itself like a corrupt, failing financial institution that desperately needs to be investigated, audited, and held legally accountable.
Which is such a wild framing. But before anyone can initiate an audit, they need to identify the specific crime being committed, right? If the 501 Empire feels the need to take the universe to court, we need to know what they're charging it with.
So the central charge is a phenomenon they call the dead harvest.
The dead harvest, okay.
Yeah. In normal terrestrial agricultural terms, the equation is pretty simple. You plant good seed, you tend the soil, and eventually, you get a good harvest.
Yeah, cause and effect.
Exactly. But the 501 Empire points out that in the spiritual or cosmic realm, planting good seed, meaning ethical behavior, hard work, sacrifice inexplicably and tragically often results in a bad harvest. Or, well, more accurately, a delayed one.
Which totally flies in the face of the whole you reap what you sow comfort narrative we've all been sold.
It completely dismantles it. And the text doesn't just state this abstractly. They rely heavily on specific parables to make the agony of this concept tangible. One narrative they use is called The Story of the Farm and the Boat.
Okay.
How does that one go? The outline describes this farmer who spends his entire youth building a massive, beautiful dock on his property. He sacrifices his health, ignores his daily life, all because he is promised that a magnificent merchant ship of blessings will arrive to reward his labor.
So he just builds and waits.
He waits, and he waits. The text notes that the ship does eventually arrive, but it arrives 50 years late.
Wait, 50 years?
50 years late. By the time it docks, the farmer is blind, bedridden, and physically unable to enjoy a single piece of the cargo. The harvest just rots on the pristine dock.
Oh, man. That is just bleak. It turns the idea of a reward into a sick joke.
Exactly. And another prominent case study they outline is called The Tragedy of Philip Singh.
Right, I read that one.
Yeah. The text describes Philip as a man who works 3 agonizingly difficult jobs for over a decade. He's trying to afford a life-saving medical treatment and a new home for his spouse.
Doing everything right.
Doing everything right, sowing all the good seed. But the cosmic bureaucracy drags out his manifestations. The universe stalls. The payout, the cleared funds, and the keys to the house finally arrives in the mail the literal day after his spouse's funeral.
Oh, wow. The literal day after. That is incredibly heavy. So it's not necessarily that the universe never pays out.
Right.
Like the money cleared, the ship arrived. But the timing is so disastrously off that the payout becomes entirely useless.
Precisely.
It's like having a corrupt life insurance policy that only pays out 40 years after the money could have saved the family farm. It's just useless paper at that point.
Yeah, it's dead harvest.
But this makes me wonder, and let me push back on the text's logic for a second here. Does the 501 Empire suggest that the universe is just, I don't know, clumsy and disorganized with its timing, or are they alleging this is actively malicious?
Oh, the 501 Empire takes a very firm, unyielding stance on that distinction. They argue that this delay is absolutely not clumsiness. It is not bureaucratic incompetence. It is a deliberate, systemic feature of the cosmic architecture.
A feature, not a bug.
Exactly. The text frames the delay itself as an active, calculated theft of human vitality.
Which immediately begs the question, if we are all getting actively scammed by the cosmos, and this has been happening since the dawn of humanity, why hasn't anyone blown the whistle before? Like, why do we just accept empty docks and late payouts?
According to the source material, the culprit is our own ancient spiritual conditioning. This leads us to a really fascinating section of the blueprints titled The Habakkuk Heist.
The Habakkuk heist.
Yeah, this chapter is an unabashed, direct attack on traditional religious acceptance. It targets the biblical book of Habakkuk specifically.
Let's contextualize that for a moment for the listener. In the traditional reading of Habakkuk, the prophet is looking around at a world filled with total injustice and suffering, and he ultimately reaches this point of radical, unconditional acceptance. He famously declares that even if the fig tree doesn't blossom, even if the fields produce absolutely no food, and even if the stalls are completely empty of cattle, he will still rejoice and wait patiently for divine justice. It's always held up as the ultimate expression of unshakable faith in the face of devastation.
And the 501 Empire views that exact declaration as the foundational scam.
Wow.
Yeah, they explicitly label Habakkuk's conclusion as spiritual bullshit. The text argues that romanticizing an empty stall doesn't prove your virtue. It just proves you've been successfully brainwashed into accepting starvation as a character-building exercise.
That is a massive theological swing. To call a foundational text of spiritual endurance a heist requires some serious justification. How do they philosophically tear down thousands of years of that kind of deep-rooted tradition?
They dismantle it by introducing this profound critique of how we experience the passage of time. The text argues that there is a fundamental predatory mismatch between how the universe operates and how human beings actually live.
Okay, a mismatch how?
Well, the universe, they claim, operates on immortal time. This is a sprawling, endless, thousand-year timeline where a century passing is just a blink of an eye. The universe has zero urgency.
Right.
But humans are trapped in mortal time. We have biological clocks. We have maybe 80 years of viable energy if we're incredibly lucky.
I see the collision course here. It's like winning a massive life-changing lottery jackpot, but when you take the ticket to the bank, the teller casually mentions it takes 40 years for the funds to clear.
Yes, exactly.
The bank might operate on a 40-year ledger, but your knees and your back don't. By the time you get the money, you're too old to hike the mountains you dreamed of climbing.
And the text highlights that exact dynamic using a very powerful piece of internal logic. They state unequivocally that a 60-year-old victory is a 20-year-old's robbery.
Wait, say that again? A 60-year-old victory?
Is a 20-year-old's robbery.
That is such a striking distillation of their philosophy. It completely shatters the virtue of divine patience. If the universe promises you something when you are 20, when you have all the energy and passion and ambition of youth, but it intentionally withholds the delivery until you are exhausted and 60, it didn't reward you. It robbed you of the 40 most fruitful years of your life.
Furthermore, this framework completely recontextualizes our understanding of human suffering. The 501 Empire uses this to shift the blame entirely off the individual.
How so?
In their view, you aren't suffering because you lack faith or because you haven't chanted enough or because you haven't waited long enough. You are suffering because the timeline you are being forced to operate on is fundamentally predatory.
Let me bring the listener in here for a second. If you are listening to this right now and thinking, well, I'm just quietly waiting for my big career break or for my health to finally turn around or for my relationship to magically fix itself, the 501 Empire is basically looking directly at you through this text and saying, you are passively funding a corrupt system with your patience. You are letting them keep the interest on your life.
The text is definitely meant to be that confrontational. It is designed to wake the reader up to their own complicity in the cosmic delay.
Okay, so if the timeline is rigged to exhaust us, that brings up a mechanical issue. The velocity gap explains why good people are kept waiting in the lobby forever, but that doesn't explain where their good seed actually goes.
Right.
If human energy and effort don't just magically disappear, someone or something else must be getting rich off all that unfulfilled potential.
And the sources anticipate that exact logical leap. They transition from the philosophy of the crime to the actual anatomy of the thief. The text breaks down two specific mechanisms of how this cosmic theft operates. You mentioned the first one, the velocity gap. The 501 Empire observes that when you analyze the world, evil rewards seem to manifest at the speed of light, while good rewards travel by turtle.
Oh, that's so true.
The corrupt individual gets their payout instantly, the grifter gets rich overnight, but the honest worker is told their reward is coming in the next life. That differential in manifestation speed, the velocity gap, is how the system keeps the good perpetually exhausted and unable to fight back.
So the bad actors get high-speed internet, and the good actors get dial-up.
Precisely.
What is the second mechanism that explains where the energy actually goes?
The second mechanism is what they call spiritual siphoning. This is where the blueprint dives into its more esoteric forensic concepts. The text asserts that human beings generate vibrant, kinetic energy when they dream, when they hope, and when they strive for a better life.
Okay, that makes sense.
But when those desires go endlessly unrewarded, that energy doesn't dissipate. It is actively hijacked by what the text refers to as thieves of the air.
Wait, hijack how? Are we talking about literal demons flying around here, or is this a metaphor for societal structures? Like, we need to understand the actual mechanism of the siphoning.
It's interesting, the text treats thieves of the air as both an energetic reality and a systemic metaphor.
Okay.
The mechanism works through friction. When you have intense, desperate hope, but you are forced into endless bureaucratic waiting or continuous unanswered prayer, that creates emotional friction.
Oh, I see.
The 501 Empire claims that these parasitic forces, whether you view them as energetic entities or just toxic societal institutions that demand constant sacrifice, literally feed off that friction.
That's wild.
The rituals of endless waiting and the institutions built on false hope act as giant psychic leeches. They siphon the kinetic energy of your unfulfilled desire to sustain themselves, leaving you drained and complacent.
That paints a terrifying picture. An active parasitic ecosystem where your positive energy is being drained off to power the very system keeping you waiting.
And this naturally leads to the text's ultimate systemic critique, which they label the problem of the unjust judge.
The unjust judge?
Yeah. The argument here is simple but devastating. If God or the universe or whatever governing consciousness oversees reality can see this massive theft occurring, can witness the velocity gap and the spiritual siphoning every single day, and does absolutely nothing to stop it, then the entire cosmic system is in default. It is ruled by an unjust judge.
But, I mean, if you declare the ultimate judge corrupt, you've just destroyed the entire court.
Exactly.
There is no higher authority to appeal to. If the universe itself is in default, you are completely legally stranded in this cosmic framework. You can't appeal to a Supreme Court if the Chief Justice is the one running the scam.
You are absolutely stranded, unless, of course, you build your own court.
Oh, wow.
And that is the radical pivot the 501 Empire makes in the final stage of the text. Because their answer to your dilemma is, you do not appeal to a higher authority. You become the authority.
How does the text suggest a normal person actually do that?
You forcefully collect what is yours through a mechanism they call the sovereign decree.
The sovereign decree.
The ultimate solution presented in these blueprints is to move the seat of judgment from the clouds to the mind of Helios. They also refer to this internal shift as claiming the internal crown.
So you're literally taking the judge's gavel away from the sky and handing it to yourself.
Yes. The focus shifts entirely away from pleading, bargaining, or praying, and moves into a state of aggressive economic and spiritual resolution. In fact, the media suite outlines a highly specific protocol for enacting this decree, centering around an April 13th deadline.
Wait, an April 13th deadline, they actually put a hard date on the cosmic calendar.
They do, because it establishes a firm boundary. In legal terms, it's a way of serving notice to reality itself. It says the audit is complete, the grace period is officially over, and the debt is now due.
That's so confrontational.
Very. And this action ties directly into one of those fascinating core tenets of their entire decree: liquidity over savings.
Liquidity over savings. Let's break that down for the listener. In financial terms, liquidity means cash in hand right now, whereas savings implies wealth locked away for the future. How does the 501 empire translate that into a spiritual practice?
The 501 empire violently rejects the trap of what they call cosmic insurance.
Cosmic insurance.
Cosmic insurance is the traditional belief that your suffering and patience right now act as a premium. You pay that premium so you can accrue crisis credits to cash in during the afterlife, or maybe decades down the road when you've, quote-unquote, built enough character. The text is completely aggressively uninterested in character building through starvation.
They don't want the empty stall to teach them a lesson. They want the cattle.
That captures it perfectly. The decree explicitly states that practitioners should not accept crisis credits for later. They must demand expansion capital, NOW.
Expansion capital now.
In a practical daily sense, spiritual expansion capital means demanding health, tangible resources, creative breakthroughs, and immediate social resolution today in your current biological reality. It means refusing to accept the narrative that a better life only comes after you die or after your youth is gone.
Here's where it gets so wild to me. The framing of this demanding expansion capital from the universe, it sounds less like a spiritual awakening and more like a hostile corporate takeover of your own karma.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Like the text's ultimate call to action isn't to reach a state of Zen enlightenment or find inner peace. It is a directive to stop waiting and start foreclosing on your stolen manifestations.
Framing it as a hostile takeover is highly accurate to the source material. If we step back and look at the bigger picture, it explains why the 501 empire uses such a uniquely blended vocabulary of hardcore finance, law, and mysticism.
Right, the audit, the decree.
Exactly. They are arguing that the spiritual realm operates as a literal economy. For millennia, Gung people have been playing by the rules of a rigged, fraudulent market. By declaring a sovereign decree, seizing the internal crown, and demanding immediate liquidity, you are effectively refusing to recognize the universe's fraudulent timeline.
It's just such a staggering, dizzying shift in perspective. To go from being the humble servant waiting patiently for the rain to fall, to being the cosmic repo man showing up at the universe's door with a clipboard to collect the debt.
And the book component of this media suite is designed to facilitate exactly that transformation.
The 30-chapter book.
Right. The sources indicate that the book serves as a literal manual. It provides the specific esoteric rituals and the rigid internal logic needed to demand that immediate payout before the fruitful years are siphoned away.
And the audio presentation.
The audio presentation of the script we analyzed is meant to be the sonic herald. It's the alarm bell designed to wake people up to the reality of the dead harvest, so their minds are primed for the deep forensic breakdown contained in the book.
It's an incredibly potent 1-2 punch. The audio breaks your reliance on patience by showing you the scam, and the book gives you the legal paperwork to foreclose on the thieves.
Understanding the appeal of this philosophy is also vital. We live in a modern era where countless people feel like they're doing everything right.
Oh, absolutely.
They're working multiple jobs, trying to be ethical, following the rules, but they are constantly, unavoidably falling behind. Meanwhile, bad actors seem to act with impunity and face zero consequences. The 501 empire is tapping into a very real, very visceral sense of global exhaustion with the wait-and-see approach to justice.
It really makes you look at every comforting platitude you've ever been handed in a totally new light. Good things come to those who wait. Well, the Mad Philosopher and Helios would look at that and say, no, empty docks and rotting harvests come to those who wait.
The text is entirely uncompromising in that regard.
As we wrap up this deep dive, the sheer intensity of the Cosmic Thief media suite really lingers. Think about the massive philosophical journey we've just taken through these sources.
That's a lot to process.
It is. We started by questioning the fundamental nature of the dead harvest, feeling the agony of Philip Singh and the farmer whose rewards arrived decades too late. We examined the 501 empire's rejection of the Habakkuk heist, throwing out thousands of years of conditioning that tells us to just smile and endure the empty stalls.
Right.
We dug into the mechanical anatomy of the crime, exposing the velocity gap and the unseen thieves of the air that siphon our kinetic energy. And finally, we looked at their radical, aggressive solution, seizing the internal crown, rejecting cosmic insurance, and serving reality with a notice to foreclose.
Whether someone views this material as a literal practical manual for manipulating the fabric of reality, or simply as a deeply fascinating piece of esoteric philosophy, it undeniably forces a total reevaluation of patience. It demands that you sit down and calculate what your mortal time is actually worth.
And I think that leaves us with a final, incredibly provocative thought experiment for you to take with you today. If you were to sit down right now, pull out a ledger, and conduct a sovereign audit of your own life, what delayed rewards have you been passively, quietly waiting for?
Hmm.
What are the dreams or resolutions you've been told you just need to be a little more patient for? And more broadly, what would actually happen to the fundamental structure of our entire society if everyone suddenly woke up tomorrow, rejected the Habakkuk heist, stopped accepting these cosmic IOUs, and collectively demanded their spiritual payouts immediately?
Would the system finally pay out? Or would the whole cosmic architecture just go bankrupt?
It brings us right back to where we started. The next time you find yourself patiently waiting for the universe to do the right thing, ask yourself if you're truly being virtuous, or if you're just leaving the vault door wide open for the thief.